Good evening, fight fans. An impromptu Monday evening with myself, Jay's Fight Talk, my friend, No Punches Pulled and Straight Talk co-host, Boxing Oracle, Statman, Liam Tully. How are we?
Yeah, I'm all good, mate. I mean, the back call came out about 15 minutes ago saying I need a bit of a rant. Do you want to join me? And I'm always up for a rant, mate. So let's get into it. There's plenty to get stuck into.
I needed to get something off my chest. Look, let's back up a little bit and we'll briefly touch on the weekend. I know we've got our weekly No Punches Pulled podcast tomorrow, so we'll just have a brief sort of touch. We had the fight card from Nottingham, sort of the homecoming that saw Lee Wood face off for the IBO super featherweight title against former IBF champion Anthony Kakachi. I mean, I enjoyed the fight. I thought the fight was decent. I was a little bit, I can't say disappointed in Lee Wood's performance because I believe that he went into it wholeheartedly assuming and thinking that he could beat Kakachi. When I use the word disappointment, I think it's with what I thought he had left. I thought he had more left, and it became apparent after 6 or 7 rounds that it wasn't the Lee Wood that we've seen in these humdinger fights before, and he just didn't have what ordinarily before he would have got up from that body shot and maybe carried on. You could see that Ben Davison threw that towel in fairly quickly. I think he could see that Lee was finished, but I enjoyed the fight, and I'm interested to see what's next for Kakachi. He's calling out Sugar Nunes. I don't get that because he vacated a belt to avoid fighting Sugar Nunes. I can't figure it out. I mean, what's your take on Saturday night?
So I was watching. I was nice weekend. I say nice weekend away. A bit of time with a mate and watching it with one of my good friends who's into his fight sports like we are. And what we said during the week could be the case with Lee Wood after his inactivity for reasons outside of his control. Kind of is what unfolded in the fight. He was there for the first 2 or 3 rounds, but when the pace kicks up a little bit, when Kakachi started landing with his jab and his backhands, Woods just couldn't seem to do anything to rearrest the tide, if that makes sense. I mean, he was competitive, even though I had him 6-2, 5-3 maybe at the time of the stoppage, if I'm being honest. I don't see the Steve Gray scorecard of having him ahead, which I'm sure we'll touch on in a minute. No. But although it's a weird thing to say because both men are a similar age, it goes to show once you get into your 30s in your career, if you can stay active and sort of ride the crest of a wave, you can do what Kakachi's doing. He's now gone through Cordina, Warrington, and Woods, 3 consecutive fights. But let's be honest, no one thought he beat Cordina. Everyone said, well, it depends on what Josh Warrington turns up, and he had a good scrap with Josh Warrington, and he's broken down. If we're honest, he broken down and forced Lee Wood to quit on Saturday night. Like he didn't turn his back and quit. Ben Davison threw his howling, but that was only going one way. Look, Lee's a proud fighter. He wasn't going to give up. He was either going out on his back or with the referee jumping in. So Ben's done him a favour. I think if we saw this fight a year ago, it would have been a better fight. Now, Kakachi may still have won, but we may have got the 12-round humdinger that we kind of hoped for in the week. In the end, we've got what normally happens when a fighter spends 18 months out of the ring at this stage of their career against a more active fighter, unfortunately. And Lee Wood said himself, he put a post out yesterday congratulating Anto, not making any excuses, and saying, I need a few weeks to take stock and see what I'm going to do next. For me, if he hangs his gloves up, there's absolutely no shame in doing it. What he's done since 2020 is more than he ever could have expected to achieve in boxing. He's had a fantastic Indian summer. He's been the Border Control Fighter of the Year. He's been in their Fight of the Year twice. He's done well the last few years. In terms of Kakachi, it's got to be big money only for me. So he talks about Sugar Nunes. Well, you vacated the belt, which is why Sugar's going out to Japan in a few weeks to fight for the vacant belt. That's. I saw a tweet from Carl Frampton, and he mentioned how no Northern Irish fighter has ever held the green and gold WBC belt before. He said the fight he'd make is bring O'Shaquie Foster over to Belfast and see, have a dig with that. Now, I think he loses to O'Shaquie Foster and Sugar Nunes.
Maybe not in Belfast.
No, it depends, doesn't it? It depends, doesn't it? But, I think it's a high-level skill matchup against both of them that he'd be an underdog in. But why not?
Yeah.
What he's managed to do in the last year now, why not allow him to roll the dice? Why not bring over Shaki Foster, for example, and let him roll the dice? Because if he wins it, he retires as a WBC world champion with one of the best nights of his career. If he loses, then he goes, bloody hell, what a run I've had the last 18 months or so. But I'm just not at that next level, but we're going to retire on a high. So I think there's good options there, actually. Look, would I be surprised if he fights Sugar Nunes? Only in the sense that he vacated for more lucrative fights. That was the whole narrative. So to then go back full circle wouldn't make sense for what the narrative was. Whereas you probably the O'Shaki Foster fight is probably more lucrative because O'Shaki is a more well-known name than Sugar Nunes is at this current time.
Yeah, I think, look, domestically, there's nothing left for him. He's cleaned up. As much as it pains me to say it, I'm a massive Lee Wood fan. I mean, I'm a Kakachi fan as well, but out of the two, I sort of leant towards Lee Wood. It's strange how we're talking about what's next for both of them, but they're both exactly the same age, within a couple of months of each other, but at differing ends of the career. Well, on the surface of it, they're at different ends of the career, but Antor's not got long left. He needs big fights. Lee Wood's had those big nights and those big fights, and I feel pretty confident in saying that he'll have made a few quid, because we know some of the cards that he's been on. For me, I think both fights, Antor with O'Shaki Foster and Sugar Nunes, he starts as the underdog. I think his best chance for me is knocking out Sugar Nunes. I think O'Shaki Foster's just too long, awkward for him. But again, he's been up against it before in fights that we all wrote him off in. And O'Shaki Foster didn't look that great in his last fight. Was it his last fight or the one before?
He hasn't looked good in his last two, if we're being honest.
Didn't he? And then rematched and sort of laboured and possibly could have lost that fight, but got it on the cards. I was being flippant, but, if it goes to points in Belfast and it's close, we know that Antor would more than likely get that decision. I don't like the Nunes fight for him either or, but if he's vacated to avoid fighting Nunes because he got paid twice as much, then it's not about legacy, it's about money. So why would you go fight him unless they pay you a massive payday? Do you understand what I'm saying? To then go fight him for just for legacy. Well, you would have fought him for legacy before, but you said you didn't want to fight him because you could get twice as much fighting a domestic for no belt. So he's sort of in a no-win situation, even though the cards are sort of. He's had a decent hand dealt.
Look, we'll save most of it for tomorrow, but I think it just shows, as I said a couple of minutes ago, you get two fighters of a similar age, but because one of them's active and one of them isn't, their careers are almost in completely different places. Anto 2 or 3. Pat, I think he's got one left. If we're talking about him fighting Sugar Nunes or O'Shaki Foster next and he loses that, I don't think he'll fight again, if that makes sense. I think it all depends if he wins his next fight. If he wins that, we might see him try and have one more. I think that's the point we're at with him. But yeah, look, let's be really honest. Lee Woods, from the night in Eddie's back garden when he beat Kanzu, and even before that, he beat Reece Moulds, didn't he, for the British title in the bubble or Wembley Arena. So he's gone Reece Moulds, Kanzu, into Conlon, the 2 Lara fights. He's done everything to do. And if he won on Saturday, I mean, that was a raucous Nottingham Arena. If he won on Saturday, that would have been incredible. But Father Time waits for no man. And unfortunately, because of what happened with Matchroom, because it was kind of, he's not a world champion anymore, so he doesn't have that law to any of the promoters, he's probably lost the best bit of the last year of his career, and he's paid the price. The reality is Lee Wood won't want to go down to British level again. That's no disrespect, that's the reality. So unless he's capable of getting a payday for a world title opportunity, that will have to be a voluntary for someone, because he's not going to be anyone's mandatory. I think he'll call it a day. And Ben Davidson will tell him that as well. We know the relationship they've got. Ben will not give him any BS. He will say, time. If it's nothing there of any note, it's your time. But as long as he's got a few quids, that's the thing with Lee Woods, because Eddie kind of threw him under the bus discussing some of the financial stuff last year, didn't he? Out of 2 of them, Anto's had 2 Riyadh season paydays in his last 3. That makes, it comes back to the conversation we've had about money, that makes a massive difference. Lee hasn't had any of those. He's just got to hope Lee's set up as well as he can be if he does.
Yeah, it's a funny one. I wouldn't want to see him drop down the levels and become cannon fodder for prospects. But on the flip side of that, he is in charge of that decision. Him and his team, and us boys here will watch if he fights, and if not, we'll cheer him off into the sunset. Either way, it's an interesting next few months for both of the combatants from the main event. We won't cover the undercards. I think we'll touch on that tomorrow. In terms of, we'll touch on that. Let's just get on with it. Look, we spoke about Martin McCauley last week and where we thought that Saudi money had sort of come in and potentially changed. Yes, it's changed the face of boxing as such. We've now got this figurehead, this focal point that's got all the money and can make all the big fights. But my concern was that we're bottlenecking all the big fights, and then there's a massive gap. It's like Championship and Premier League in football. You can get promoted, but staying up's a different thing because the gap to be consistent. And what they're doing is they're getting promoted to the Champions League, and then it's to the Premier League, and then they're like, oh, right, so what do we do now then? So they've made all these big fights, and then there's everybody wanting massive paydays, but all the big fights have been made. Name me, I tried it today. I can't name 5 big top fights that we want to see in the next 12 months that Saudi could make. You'd start saying Fury and AJ, which is not a fight I'm interested in, because he's done them all in the space of 18 months. So now we've got to try and wait for stars to come back round. And then the guys that have been in Riyadh are not going to want to step back down and fight on a GBM or a Matchroom or a Boxer Show for a fifth of what they've been getting paid in Saudi. If he gets bored and pulls out, we've seen it again. I'm using football as an analogy. But we've seen it where football clubs have been taken over by multi-billionaires. And then Notts County, for example. Notts County had Sven-Goran Eriksson, Sol Campbell, all this money. Didn't exactly come to fruition. And they are second division, I want to say now, League 2. Anyway, the reason I touched on that was because today it was announced that Savannah Marshall and Chantel Cameron have both been signed to MVP. Now, I know MVP, Most Valuable Promotions, which is part owned by Jake Paul, are not the same as Saudi, but there is a similarity in the fact that they are trying to corner a market, and it looks like it's the female market that they're trying to corner. And the issue that we're going to have is these women, like Chantel and Savannah, are going to get mad paydays for fights on MVP. But then when Jake gets bored and doesn't want to do it anymore, because let's be real, he ain't going to do this for the rest of his life, right? Those girls have got nowhere to go. There's only Ben Shalom, really, that's got any decent female fighters on his roster, really. And that's no disrespect to any of the women boxers with other promoters. I meant names, as in names. Jake Paul's slowly but surely taking them all.
So let's go to your initial point. We've spoken about it off camera, and it became kind of a focal point unexpectedly for a debate on No Punches Pulled last week, that the effect for Saudi money's having. And it's a difficult one. I mean, let's look at this weekend. We've got the Copper Box cards, which is Johnny Fisher and Dave Allen rematch. And you've got Kieran Conway for the British title on there. You've got George Lydiard for the English title. And you've got, I want to say, Johnny Sims for the Southern Area title, which is a solid card. However,
it's your dogs tonight, brother, not mine.
It's my... Someone else is down there. It's fine. She's getting panned. It's getting panned. She's getting panned. Talk about the dog. It's getting panned as a card because we are spoiled in terms of what we are seeing once or twice a month, if that makes sense. But that's a good card on Saturday night. Look, when does a heavyweight main event at the Copper Box that's sold out for 6,500 people is going to deliver? Johnny Fisher's done 3,500 of those tickets by himself. Wow. Which tells you everything. I mean, it's 25 minutes from Romford to Stratford on the old Elizabeth line. So they are going to flood in their numbers. make a mess of Westfield, and have a good night. And that's what it's all about. But as we saw in the first fight, and as we've said, we're going to find out the level, aren't we? Can Johnny move on? Can Dave Allen maybe get a British or Commonwealth title fight? That's the level.
Is there a strap? Is there anything on the line for this one?
WBA, Intercontinental, you're going to get a ranking crap anyway. So, but that's a solid fight, but it's not getting recognised in the same way as it would have done 3 or 4 years ago. That's the reality. Then you move across to these Saudi cards. And as we said last week, none of the fights that were on the Riyadh cards and the Canelo cards realistically needed Turkey or the Saudi money. You know, Canelo could have fought Skull at T-Mobile or at, Cowboy Stadium, like he's done on Cinco de Mayo 3 or 4 times with Billy Joe Saunders and John Ryder, people like that. That's what he does. But the money's there from Turkey, so they go over. But that product's now being diluted because Turkey's made fights. And then, there's only ever been one female fight on the Turkey cards, and that was Sky Nicholson when she beat Raven Chapman. And we said, if you're going to put a female fight on a Turkey card, no disrespect, Sky Nicholson is fighter to do it with, because as good as her boxing skills is, she's not that entertaining.
You need someone like Savannah Marshall or Chantel Cameron or Caroline Dubois, somebody with a bit of excitement, a bit of pop. Yeah. Go on, sorry.
So now we'll come to the MVP part, and we know that Jake Paul signed Amanda Serrano pretty much out the gates and is done incredibly well with Amanda Serrano, raising her profile and all of the stuff that's come with it. However, Jake Paul has more money than sense. I said this earlier. That's the reality. And he is also petulant and petty. So he is very happy throwing all this money at Ellie Scottney, Chantel Cameron, flipping Baumgardner, etc., etc. Let's have Savannah Marshall. Let's not forget that one, because he knows that no one else in the market can give them that money. But as I made, slight tongue-in-cheek comment earlier when we were talking about it, when he does an event in America and he puts Savannah Marshall and, Chantel Cameron on there, unless it's got Amanda Serrano at the top, they'll sell 5.
No one's interested.
No one's interested. So then where's the money coming from the purses? Because that's the issue here. It's a short-term goal to bring these women over and offer them a load of money to make MVP look like the only promoter that gives a damn about women's boxing. But in about 12 months' time, how many of the names that have been signed in the last month are still going to be there? Now, let's leave Amanda Serrano on her own, because Amanda Serrano's been there and she's done Katie Taylor Freeze, her 6th or 7th scheduled fight under MVP. So we know she gets the work. But everyone else, how long are they going to stay for? Chantel Cameron said that she's gone because the opportunities offered by MVP, Frank and George Warren told her, if you look on her Twitter, we can't match that. You need to go. Ellie Scottney, exactly the same. Shane McGuigan said in an interview during the Bill and Smith fight week that this offer came in, it was money that, made my eyes water. And Eddie just went, what do you want me to do? I can't actually do anything to match this. Do I want to take you to Undisputed? Yes, but I'm not going to be able to do it for that amount of money. So let's see what happens. Look, we know the MSG card for Taylor Serrano 3 is going to be stacked. We know it's got Baumgardner on there. We know it's got, obviously, what the main event is. I'd imagine we'll get, I think Ellie Scottney is looking at having on there in another unification. If they're going to let Savannah onto it as well. But it's not.
I think I'll come on to you in a second, Hand History Vault. Thanks for joining us, brother. I think he's got Savannah Marshall because he's going to try to do something with Claressa Shields. But I'm talking about the PFL. Because he's connected to PFL as well, isn't he? So maybe there's an inroad there, maybe. Because that's the only big fight. Any fans, and I'm a Savannah Marshall fan, right? But any casual, he's not going to tune in to see Savannah Marshall fight for anything. But if she's fighting Claressa Shields in a rematch or in an MMA contest, then it becomes a little bit more intriguing to the casual. I hate using that term. But I believe that that's why he's done it. Some of it he's done out of spite, just to take them off the Eddie Hearn and to make out he's the big shot. But there's no substance to it. There's no foresight. And look, if they can get life-changing money for a couple of fights, then ultimately, that who are we to sort of poo-poo that? But it pisses me off that they're all jumping ship for just money.
Money. It's for money.
It's sad, but ultimately that's what they do it for.
Savannah Marshall makes sense, mate, because she's been disrespected and dragged through the mud by Boxer. That's the reality. So someone turning Savannah Marshall and saying, look, we're going to pay you what you think you're worth and we're going to give you opportunities. You can't blame her at all. She, out of all of them, makes the most sense because of what's happened. Some of the others you look at and go, well, it's very clear you're doing it for the money. And look, like you say, who are we to begrudge
No,
these girls
definitely.
maximising their potential?
They definitely are. Sorry, just a point I'm going to make there about money. Chantel Cameron, former world champion and current interim, I believe. Did she get an interim in her last fight?
Yeah, WBC interim.
I've seen her touting for sponsors on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
She shouldn't have. She should not be having to do that. And I'm not having a dig at her there. I'm just talking about the state of women's boxing. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. So it's understandable why they're doing it. I'm just pissed off that boxing's allowing MVP to come in and do that, and they're not sort of fighting. Let's take money out of it. Some, the tradition and the life's being sucked out of boxing. It's just becoming a cold. I can't express what I feel, but I don't like it. I don't like it when it's just about money, but I will say it again. The prize fighters, they do it for the prize, but I'm a traditionalist. I'm old school. I like to see them go through the ranks and eventually earn themselves a title shot, whereas now it can just give you the cherry on top straight away without having to get the rest of it to get you there. He's just buying fights and paying fights and, like Andy Strivolt's there saying that there's rumours that he's going to get a shot at Badou Jack. Well, I think Badou Jack would lay down for him anyway. He'll roll over. And it's disgusting if he shouldn't get a ranking, let alone a fight. He hasn't done anything. In that case, then, Tommy Fury should get a WBC fight first then. So he's beat Jake Paul, has he not?
Yeah.
What do you reckon? Do you think that fight's going to happen? I can't believe we're talking about it, but we've got to.
Look, Mauricio Sulaiman has been sniffing around Jake Paul for 3 or 4 years now. The fight between him and Tommy Fury had a made-up Saudi diamond glittery WBC belt put on it. It's not the first time we've heard the rumours Jake Paul's going to get the fight. The reality is, Badou Jack is probably the only one of these cruiserweights at the moment holding the WBC title who it's feasible we can see Jake Paul fight. Because if this was Zerdo Ramirez or Jai Opataya, for example, it's not happening. But Badou Jack makes sense because Badou Jack is also in Sulaiman's back pocket because he was allowed to be champion in flipping recess or whatever the WBC call it for over 2 years after beating Maccabi on that Paul and Fury card before coming back last weekend. It's a joke. It stinks. Do I want it to happen? No. Do I think we're going to get it in October or November? Yeah. Sadly, I think we're going to see it at the back end of this year on Netflix at Cowboy Stadium. I think we're going to get it.
Yeah, Andy Strivolt reckons it is after the Tommy Fury. Tommy Fury's after the rematch. Tommy Fury, that's the only fight he's got, bro. He's useless. He is absolutely useless. He laboured to a win over a Bulgarian taxi driver or whoever he was. He's crap. He's crap. He's just not got. I mean, Tyson's the only one of the Furies that's any good. Let's be honest. All the spin-offs. His other brother, was it Shane that boxed?
One of his Shane had a couple, but he didn't do much.
Yeah, he was shit. Crap. Hughie Fury. I can't say he's crap, but he's not of the level of Tyson. I think Tyson's set a benchmark for the rest of them, and look, he's one of a kind. Size, the skill set that he's got. I don't care if I ever see Tommy Fury and Jake Paul fight again. I wasn't interested the first time. I'm not interested the second time. I'll watch Jake Paul against Badou Jack. I think the only way he beats Badou Jack is if Badou Jack lets him beat him. And I think there's a good chance he would let him do that. If the money's enough, he'll let him do that.
There'll be enough money.
Well, we're going to see Jake Paul, WBC Cruiserweight Champion of the World then, aren't we? That's what we're going to see. Could you imagine? And do you know what makes it worse? right? Do you know what makes me sick as an adult now of nearly 50 years old, right? I've been in and around boxing for 40 years, right? My brother was you know the fucking story. You know, I boxed myself, and me and my little brother, we used to push the sofas back. We used to pretend that we were boxing, and we were always fighting for the WBC middleweight or super middleweight championship of the world. That's the belt that everybody wants. I've sent you a picture of one of my dogs. My dog's got a WBC collar. You know, the WBC is the belt, is the prestige, it's the belt that all the fighters dream of having. It's you know, if we could fight, it's the fight. You know, I've dreamt of it. My brother boxed for titles and dreamt of it. They are the worst. The acronym I use for in WBC is We Be Crooks. You know, the dad was crooked, the son's crooked, allegedly. You know, but they're not even sly about it now. Whoever pays them the most gets what they want. And you know, I was against Turkey monopolising boxing. But in a way, at least if it was monopolised, everybody would have to dance to the same tune. Whereas at the moment, these governing bodies do whatever they do for their 3% and their backhanders and their brown envelopes. And this is a prime example of boxing being as corrupt as it's ever been.
Mate, you've just nailed it with the WBC, the green and gold belt. What's the belt in all the Rocky films and the Creed films? It's the WBC. Yes, the others might be attached and around the fight, even Mitch, but what's the belt that is spoken about by Rocky is that, you know, the main one is the WBC title because that's the value in the history of that belt. But look, we moan about the corruption in boxing. Let's not spend the rest of the night doing it. But the reality is, if Jake Paul is even allowed to fight for a world title, it just shows that money talks and whoever pays the most gets what they want, regardless of anything else.
I'm going into trade. If he gets a world title fight, I am coming out of retirement. I am going into camp. I'm going to set up a YouTube channel and hit the dark corner and start calling him out and calling people out and see if I can get my brains punched in for money. Obviously, I am joking and I would never do that. I struggle to fight sleep. But it misrepresents the sport that we love. You know, I've grown up on it. It's my favourite sport. It's always been my favourite sport. I love football. I love MMA. I love a plethora of sports, but boxing is my go-to sport, right? It's the first headlines I check. It's this is the reason why we're here tonight. It's the reason why I talk on and you talk on social media. It's because it's boxing. You know, all my social media is boxing. Odd picture of my dogs, odd picture of my kids, probably more pictures of my dogs than my kids. But most of it is fight sports and boxing. And it's getting to the point now where it's coming off scripted like WWE. We can predict the fights that are going to happen. We can predict who's going to be champ, who's going to get the fights. And it's never been like I say it's never been like that. Boxing's always been clandestine deals going on in the background.
It's never been this blatant. It's never been this blatant and obvious.
That's the thing. It's blatantly obvious what's going on. And I've never ever said this, but I hope Jake Paul now gets the Canelo fight because Canelo will punch his face in, I believe. I believe he would.
I hope so.
Just a few. I'll just go through a few of these quickly. Good evening, Paddy. Thanks for joining us. I missed your questions there, DJ Pat, so I do apologise. I wasn't ignoring you. Just we'd moved on from the females. WBC Cruiserweight Champion. Oof, the word Jake Paul. Can you imagine? Can you imagine Michael Buffer having to announce Jake Paul as the WBC Cruiserweight oh, God. I might have to get off. I might have to say, stop the ride. I want to get off.
Wave the white flag.
Let me back in. Bar me. Ban me. Shut my channel down. I would never do that, but I'd be devastated because it just proves that we've had it in MMA. CM Punk tried, didn't he? But he had a wrestling background at the very.
At least there was something there with CM.
And he had two proper fights, didn't he? He fought Mickey Gall.
Yeah.
And then he came back and fought Mike Jackson, was it?
I think so.
and he got bashed in both times. He got beaten up, submitted, and whatnot. But at least he had a go. Jake Paul hadn't had a fight yet. I mean, people will say, well, he's boxed Tommy Fury, right? He hasn't had a fight yet. He's boxed Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva's my age, right? And I struggle going up 2 flights of stairs, right? Albeit the Spider Anderson Silva, he hasn't been the Spider since 2015, right? Who else has he boxed? A basketballer, Tyron Woodley.
Ben
Can't
Askren.
box. Tyron Woodley's a notorious wrestler. Yes, he was 5 times UFC. Well, it doesn't make anyone to say that. He's a 1-time UFC world champion that defended the belt 5 times. It don't make you 5 times world champion. But look, he's got some names on his record. He hasn't got any fights on his record. He's got names.
But let's call it for what it is. Where Jake Paul is being clever is when he's fought the likes of Askren and Woodley. You would say their base is wrestling. Or jiu-jitsu, etc. Anderson Silva was the most striker-like out of all the ex-UFC fighters. However, like you said, Jay, he was in his late 40s by the time he took the fight. And actually, Anderson Silva lasted 8 rounds with Jake Paul, which I think says more about Jake Paul than it does Anderson Silva.
Yeah.
That's the reality. Look, we know money talks. Jake Paul's got fight books, hasn't he, for June or July?
Julio Cesar Chavez Jr.
There we go, yeah. So he's got that.
Who's a lazy middleweight.
So look, he beats Chavez Jr. He calls out Baddy Jack. They face off in the ring. They push each other in the face. All the security jump in. And then Baddy Jack takes a nice brown envelope to take a dive in round 5.
Do you know the only fight other than Canelo that would make me have a little bit of respect for Jake Paul and what he's doing?
Go on.
It's Carl Froch. Fight
Carl. Yeah, and I know why, but
because Froch is fit. He's 40-ish. Is he my age? 46, 47?
Yeah, he's 40, mid to late 40s.
Yeah, but he's fit. Can fight. Cruiserweight would probably suit Carl Froch now because he'd just bulk up a little bit more. I think that's a fight. Not someone 15 years removed from the highlight, the heyday. What's Carl Froch removed? When was the George Groves fight? 2013, something like that?
2014 was the rematch. 31st of May, 2014.
So Carl Froch is what? 10 years removed from his peak?
Yeah.
But he's fit. Looks like he did. He hadn't changed much. He hadn't put a lot of weight on, has he, really?
He's got a new nose and a new set of teeth.
That's it. He's got a straight nose, decent teeth. But other than that, I think that's a proper fight. But he won't fight anybody Nate Diaz, that's another one that he fought. Nate Diaz, for God's sake, who doesn't hit hard with 4 ounces on, let alone 10 or 12. Oh, I think we lost Liam there. You back? Can you hear us, Liam? Are you there? There he is. He's back.
Too much Jake Paul talk, mate. My Wi-Fi decided
I think so, yeah. Stop now, boys. The Jack Nicholson will never happen on a big stage. WBC.
I think it will.
Crazy. Sadly, to put that in facts. I think it'll happen, but it wasn't. It was a question that was posed to us, brother. We hadn't started talking about this. We were not interested. You're underestimating. No, we're not underestimating the WBC. The WBC can't be underestimated. The shithouses will do whatever they want to do to suit them. They don't give a shit. Listen, they are the only. The IBF, right, will strip a boxer that's won a title when he's took too long in the shower after just winning it. They don't give a shit. The WBC have got champions. Charlo's the WBC champion, isn't it?
Still.
He's not fought for how long?
3 years. Coming up to.
There you go. They're notorious for letting people. Who did they let vacate a belt? Was it Canelo that they let vacate a belt? The I can't remember, right? The WBC let a fighter vacate a belt. The belt got won by somebody else, and then he came back and said he wanted his belt back. You might not. I think it's a while ago.
Sounds like something Canelo could do and get away with over the WBC. Yeah, look, Pat, we don't want to see the fight happen. We pray to God if it does happen for the sake of boxing, Baddy Jack wins. But nothing would surprise me anymore. And out of all the governing bodies, the WBC are batshit crazy enough to allow Jake Paul to fight for their belt. I say batshit crazy. They want the money that badly. All the governing bodies want money, but Maurizio Sulaiman is driven by money in a way that the other three aren't.
I can't find it, but there was somebody might be able to tell me in the comments. Somebody vacated the WBC belt. They sort of relinquished it. And then it got fought for, and they came back and said they wanted it back, and I think they got it. Like they switched it to a emeritus or recess or but look, ultimately the WBC will do what suits the WBC. They always have done, they always will do. Nothing's going to change that. Right, look, something a little bit different. I want to touch on the UFC for a brief moment before we call it a day, because we don't really talk about MMA much these days. Have you managed to catch up with the card from the early hours?
Yeah, I watched. I was again. Me and my mate Paul's an all nicer with a few vodkas on the go. So yeah, stayed up to watch it. Bilal Muhammad went from shooting takedowns and wrestling the title away from Leon Edwards to not really shooting a takedown and allowing Jack Della Maddalena to take the belt away from. Does that make sense? Yeah. It wasn't to do, but Bilal put in a very unbelievable performance, if that makes sense. It was a strange main event, wasn't it?
Fell in love with his hands. So what happened, I think, I've seen a statement somewhere where he, I think it was him, said he had hands like Canelo, or was it Ali Abdulaziz said he had hands like Canelo?
No, he said it himself.
He's fallen in love with it. I mean, I think he tried 8 takedowns and got 1, but his takedown seemed half-assed. The thing that's got him to the dance has been taken out of his game, and he fell in love with Jack Della Maddalena is probably one of the best pure boxers in the UFC. Now, I'd said to you off camera on our group chat that I'd not seen anything from Jack Della Maddalena that made me think he could beat Bilal Muhammad. But you have to bear with me, because he's had a couple of performances where he's sort of... The Kevin Holland fight was not good from Della Maddalena. No. Wasn't good at all, right? And we didn't see the same two fighters. So we didn't see Bilal Muhammad that came to was it Manchester or London?
Manchester
and put a beating on Leon Edwards. We didn't see the Jack Della Maddalena that was letting Kevin Holland sort of take him down at ease and at will. So neither of those guys fought how we expected them to fight. Yes, Bilal tried for takedowns, but you could see as soon as JDM got the underhook, it was done, and he was reversing it. Can I say this? Craig Jones needs to be commended, because he's been involved in Jack and Volk's camps recently, and he was involved when Volk went toe-to-toe with Islam Makhachev, and his BJJ and wrestling and grappling was a big part of that game. So I think he says that in every fight. I've heard him say that before. You got to keep pinning the... See you next fucking Tuesday, mate. But yeah, Australasia are having a little bit of a resurgence. Obviously, he's on his way down, but we've got Kai Kara France. He's due a title shot next, isn't he, I think?
I think so. Should get it this year.
After knocking out Steve Erceg. Steve Erceg's a strange one. He sort of burst onto the scene and then he sort of whimpered out. Who would you like to see Jack Della Maddalena? Who would you like to see the two main eventers fight next? What do you think's next for both?
It's a difficult one, because you summed it up perfectly. So I said in our chat on Saturday morning, I felt JDM was going to win it, and I couldn't give a concrete reason, because like you say, we haven't seen anything spectacular from him. I just had this feeling that he was going to do it, and he did. What's he going to do next? Ian Gary?
Ugh. Well, he did say cold. Did you see what he said? It was cold. I missed it first. So there must have been an interaction between... I'm sick of seeing Ian Gary's kid. No disrespect to you. Your little boy's beautiful and he's super cute, but it's so forced. Do this. Show him you can't do this. It's like Ian Gary's trying to make his kid like front and centre. Do you understand what I mean? He forces his kid to do these fucking things. So let your kid do what he wants. Climb and fucking grab shit and put it in his mouth and stuff.
Yeah, kids.
Stop making him do this, do this, Yeah, I don't like it. It's cringy for me. But anyway, there must have been an interaction between. I think Jack was getting interviewed, and the kid got that because I saw him do it with Bilal, where he were asking Bilal questions, and someone said to Jack Della while he was at the press conference, "Oh, yeah, we saw you get asked questions by Gary's kid," and I think they were pushing for him to say something about Ian Gary, and he just looked up and he went, "That's not his kid," and then went to the next question. I think he is Ian Gary's son, I believe, unless Jack allegedly knows something we don't.
Yeah, I think. Well, Ian Gary was the backup fighter, wasn't he?
Wade in at 168.
And look, it doesn't always work like that in the UFC. We know what's coming. Islam's moving up, so there's what's coming. Islam's moving.
Where's
up.
Shavkat? Is he back yet?
We haven't heard anything. And again, this is the thing: Islam and Shavkat are phenomenal fighters, but we only see them once a year. And I think Dana's pretty fed up of the fact that Shavkat is not lost his title opportunity because they get it, but the cards have had to be reshuffled because Shavkat's been injured. Islam's done it before, hasn't he, with injuries or can't fight unless it's in certain places.
Well, Ramadan's coming up, I'm pretty sure. There's another one soon.
Yeah, so if JDM wants to get out the back end of the summer, so August, September time, Ian Gary's the one to make.
Yeah.
I mean,
do you think he's earned it, Ian?
I think he does, mate. I think you don't get made a backup fighter for the main event if Dana doesn't feel like you're at least in contention for the title shot.
Unless you're Michael Chandler.
Well, yeah, but Chandler and Dana have the same sort of relationship as Dana and John Jones, but that's a conversation for another day.
John Jones, right? Yeah, don't start me on that one, please.
Valentina Shevchenko. I don't think it matters who she fights.
Sorry, yes, Paddy. We know that. I meant, has anybody heard of him? Do we know his recovery time? Or because I think he'd had surgery.
He had surgery back in the last year, didn't he?
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
Shevchenko, unless she's going to fight Alexia Grasso again, I think she
retire for me.
Yeah, retire, because all she's going to do is we're going to get another 5 rounds like we did. And
if they're going to make Weili come up, I think that's the fight they're probably looking to make. But that doesn't do anything for Valentina Ragdoll's Weili. We saw that with Joanna, didn't we?
Yeah.
When Joanna came up. I know they'd fought before in kickboxing, Joanna and Valentina, but she's just too big for her. But Weili Zhang is built a little bit more powerfully than a majority of the ladies in that division below her, hence why she's the champion.
I agree. I think it's either Alexia Grasso for the 4th time or Weili comes up, but I wouldn't be against seeing Valentina retire. She's phenomenal to watch. She always delivers. She always turns up. However, she's lapping the field.
But they are getting closer, aren't they?
Of course they are. Of course, but that is as much to do with where Valentina's at in her
That's what I mean. I'd
like
to see her go out at the top, but
yeah,
I think she still thinks she's got a lot left because what else has she got? I mean, she's a career, lifelong martial artist. I mean, her mum is involved in martial arts. Her sister, was it Antonina? Wasn't it Antonina? Yeah. So I don't know what she's got without fight sports. She don't, you don't see her doing anything other than fight camps, and I fear for her going on too long because she hasn't got anything else for herself. You know what I mean?
That's the fear with her, isn't it? It's her going on too long because she doesn't know what's next. But it's difficult because it's not very often that you have 2 title fights in the UFC and we're actually sitting here trying to think what both champions do next. Like JDM and Ian Gary, that pay-per-view they do the 2nd Saturday of September, it wouldn't at all surprise me.
So you don't think they're going? I thought they might try a double header for summer, so they might try Islam and JDM and Ilya and Charles in like a double international fight week, Friday and a Saturday maybe.
I'd like to see Islam, but I'm one of those people. Until Islam gets on the scales the day before the fight, I'm always unsure if we're going to see.
You think he's going to go? He's going to go up in it.
He's got. I think, mate. I think he's got to. I think for his career as well, you can tell the fact that Volk has been one of his biggest challenges at 155, and that's Volk coming up, kind of
Yeah, I don't
tells you
think he's
what.
big enough for 170, mate.
Nor do I, mate. But at the same time, I think he needs to move up for himself. But we'll see, mate. I don't think we see Islam until Abu Dhabi in October. I think he'll get announced and then pull out, and we'll see him in October.
Yeah, I could see that happening. I think he had a better chance of I know he wouldn't fight him because of Ali Abdulaziz, but I thought Bilal would have been an easier fight for him than Jack Della Maddalena. I know he's a better striker than what Khabib was, but I think Jack will piece him up on feet. I think he could knock him out. Because remember, he's susceptible. He's been knocked out before. He got knocked out in his debut, didn't he? UFC debut. Yeah. Volk knocked him down, if I remember rightly. Or was it Charles that knocked him down? Did
Volk knocked him down twice. Charles once.
So he's vulnerable to punches. I can't disagree with you there, though, about him announcing the fight, then maybe pulling out, because he does pull out of a lot of fights. Similar to Khabib. I think it's they train that hard that they just blow off knees and bits and bobs, you know. But it's opened up a load more fights, and it's just gutted me that we aren't going to see Ilya and Islam. I wanted to see that at 155. And I don't think Charles deserves a title shot, if I'm honest.
It comes down to the conversation we've had a few times already this year of the strength of the UFC and its star power is the weakest it's been in maybe 10 years.
They can't put Paddy in. The fight to make Ilya Paddy, because you got the background. I know they shook hands the other week, but Paddy has mentioned something about him previously. He doesn't call it, he calls him El Chorizo now, don't they? That's his racial slur, not mine.
Mate, you know what they're trying to do with that, though? They want to make that. So Dane is saying the UFC is coming to Spain next year. So I think you can put money on what that main event will be. Ilya and Paddy.
I think he batters Paddy.
Barcelona next April. It looks like they want to do that.
Think he beats Paddy?
We won't see it before.
Think he beats Paddy?
I think Ilya does, yeah.
In me. I just can't not see him. After he slept Max, I can't unsee him sleeping anybody. And I know Paddy... Scousers don't get knocked out and all that lot. Ask Darren now. I should make Darren tell how that goes. But in all seriousness, he takes way too many shots to be. And Ilya, it's really hard. It's whether it transfers up to 155. We'll see that, won't we, soon?
Paddy is still, for me, one acid test away from being able to beat someone like Ilya. He needs, look,
Charles?
Tony Ferguson, Michael Chancellor, Kevin Holland, King Green, etc., all have names, but they're all on the other side of their careers. He needs
Holland.
Not Kevin Holland, sorry.
Good.
I don't know where Kevin Holland's come from there, but all the other names, they're all on the slope in their career. He needs someone that's still in and around the mix. Charles, yeah, Charles.
I give him Charles, or what's the Christian guy called that fought the jiu-jitsu guy that fought Charles?
I'll have to look at this because it's going to bug me.
Look at UFC lightweights, top fives. It's not Taporian, it's the other one. He's got a name, American.
Yeah, fair I know skin, who. I just
dark skin. The flip's his name. He got knocked out in his last fight. Didn't Taporian knock him out? It was Taporian and you know what I'm on about, don't you? Neil.
Yes, I do.
Neil. It's 10 points for anyone that gets that. UFC. Let's have a look. I've got it here.
Go on then.
I thought he had, but I've got the pound for pound rankings and not the rankings. What the hell's his name? Right, his name is Beneil Dariush. Told you, Neil.
Yes.
Told you, Neil. It should be. But no one knows. John Jones is stoned in Thailand at the minute, riding around on back of scooters. So, and Tom's in camp like he always is, consummate professional. I personally don't want to see that fight because I've got Brit bias for Tom. I think Tom's fantastic, and I'm a John Jones super fan, even though he's a cheating bastard, scumbag,
Right,
PED.
you are, mate. You are.
But I love John Jones. I've been a John Jones fan from before he moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico, when he was still in New York. So, yeah, I'm a massive fan of both. I'd hate to see two of them go. I'm edging Tom if those two do fight, and just for the simple fact that John's not a natural heavyweight and he is a little bit older, and I don't want to see him lose. I'd like to see him retire unbeaten. But, you know, that fight could still be in the works, and John Jones could be selling us down the river, pretending, and it might be out at Tiger Muay Thai for all we know, or somewhere like that. But yeah, something like Beneil Dariush. Nobody wants to see that fight, Paddy. Nobody wants to see that.
No one. I mean, it looks like they get it, but no one wants to see it.
No.
I think, going back to Pimblett quickly, it needs to be someone like Dariush or Oliveira. So if he beats someone like that, then you can say, right, he's had his acid test now, because at the moment he hasn't had a true acid test for me because he's beaten fighters that are on the slide. So that's what Paddy needs before he gets a title.
So Paddy's at 8. So if he fights up, you've got Mateus Gamrot at 7, Dan Hooker at 6, Dustin Poirier at 5, but he's fighting Max Holloway at 4 in his final fight.
Yeah.
Gaethje, Oliveira, Sarukian, and the champ. So unless he fights down, which are Dariush is behind him, then we got Renato Moicano, Rafael Fiziev, Chandler, Benoit Saint-Denis. That could be a good fight. But to be fair, you'd expect Paddy to beat Saint-Denis. We were high on him, but then Poirier knocked him out. Then he got knocked out in the fight after that, didn't he? He got a win at the weekend. He did get a win at the weekend. Yeah, decent. Grant Dawson, Joel Alvarez. Don't want to see him fight. I don't want to see him fight down anyway. Paddy's got to fight. So for me, it's Gamrot, Hooker, or Dariush. I know Dariush is 1 behind him, but the only reason Dariush is down at 9 is because he lost the Sarukian fight, didn't he? But he was supposed to get the title shot, was Dariush, before he got... Didn't he beat Charles, Dariush? I'm pretty sure he's beat Charles at some stage.
Charles. Mate, for me, Dan Hooker, 5-round main event on a fight night. That's what you want. Dan Hooker as a 5-round main event.
That's a good fight.
That's the fight. Get it? But not an Apex. We want it,
No, that's got to be fans.
Dana wants to do Liverpool. We know Dana wants to come back to Liverpool. Make that the fight night in Liverpool.
Ooh, God. Sign Shamrock, Lewis McGrillen. Oh, my God. Could you imagine? Luke, what's the other one called? Is it Luke Riley?
Luke Riley.
Oh, my God. Could you imagine that card? McGrillen's not going to come because he's going to get dough from PFL. But he might. They do. I've heard, I think, Ditchever. I've heard her mention UFC. McGrillen would be fantastic. Paul Hughes, another, he fought at the weekend.
That's the way to do it, mate. Sorry.
Go on.
But if it's not going to be an eliminator type fight as co-main on a pay-per-view, it needs to be a fight night over here in the UK. And Dan Hooker's the one. If you're going to give Paddy a main event, I'd say Dan Hooker over Saint-Denis, Dariush, anyone else. Dan Hooker's the one.
Unless it's Gaethje.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, Gaethje. Oh, stop it.
Look, if he's good enough, then...
Beat Gaethje.
If he's good enough, then, these are the fights. I remember, and I remember feeling similar for Conor. When they made the Mendes fight, I was like, oh, and he scraped through that. Then they made the Aldo fight. I thought, oh, this is where it's over for Conor. This is where he's not that good, and I don't believe he was. I just believe that the stars aligned for him that night, and if Jose Aldo fell into his trap, I believe if they'd have rematched, Jose would have beat him. But coulda, woulda, shouldas, and he went on. He did exactly the same thing to Eddie Alvarez. He made Eddie Alvarez fight with emotion, chase him around, and just pop shotted him.
All over MSG.
Yeah, I get that feeling with Paddy. But look, I was half worried that Chandler would beat him, and he made it look fairly comfortable and easy. So, but Dan Hooker, we could have just made that his next fight.
Mate, it makes sense. Dan Hooker never doesn't deliver. It's enough. Dan Hooker is also coming off of a win. So he's in a position where Dan Hooker is... Look, we know where Dan's at in his career. We know who he's lost to, but he wasn't meant to win on the Izzy and Dricus card last August, and he did. He needs a name now. Paddy's that name. If Dan Hooker can beat Paddy, then we're having the conversation about Dan getting to roll the dice one last time. But if Paddy beats Dan, then he puts himself in the top 5, and then we carry on moving, don't we, mate?
We do. Couple to mention. You mentioned it earlier. The former champ, Alexa Grasso, lost against Silva. Ruined Mayaka. Thanks, love. I think she's young enough to come again.
She'll come again, mate.
Belt. I think Valentina just had an off night, got caught in a sub. I'll move quickly across to PFL to mention, because we had Paul Hughes headlining a card. Now, we were on the live doing the boxing, and I was watching that at the same time. I watched the Lewis McGrillen fight. I'll come on to him in a second. But Paul Hughes won in about 40 seconds against
quick, mate. It was
Miranda,
quick.
Bruno Miranda.
Yeah.
It was done and dusted. Let's have a look. Round 1, 42 seconds. And Bruno is a good fighter. Good, solid opponent. And he dispatched him with ease. When are we going to see him fight Usman Nurmagomedov again? Because, I edged him that fight.
Should be next. I'm hoping Paul Hughes has had his run out, which I think he probably wanted for confidence more than anything else at the weekend. And now it should be Usman. And we know they'll probably make that in London again. We know you'll probably get that Wembley Arena, maybe even the Indigo at the O2 later in the year. That's where that'll get made, because Umar doesn't sell tickets in America or anywhere else. So it's got to be over here, especially it's sold out Wembley Arena last time, so there's no reason why it can't again.
Fingers crossed. Lewis McGrillen. What can you say about that kid? He's really good. I mean, he's reckless. He's got a ginger mullet. He's built like a tank and can fight like fudge. Wow.
How long till he goes to the UFC? That's the question. How long now is it before?
He got 100 grand for winning the European, didn't he? So I'm assuming he's getting decent paychecks now. If he's not in this tournament, then
he's got to go. He's got to move across.
The UFC will take him, won't they?
I think that's what it is now. It's either get in this tournament, win it, then move to the UFC, or you're not in the tournament, you move straight across.
Because what's her name did it, didn't she? Chanel Dyer? I don't think she's moved across to UFC yet, but she's left PFL because she didn't get in that tournament.
Yeah. Well, mate,
they were high on her.
Just spoken about we just spoken about the UFC's dwindling star power. There's someone to inject a bit of life into it and get people sitting up and taking notice. Okay, it's not an American fighter, so we know what the argument will be from that side of things.
But his fight style. Oh, do you know who he reminds me of? And I think it's the hair as well. Clay Guida. Have you ever seen Clay Guida versus Gilbert Melendez?
Yes, I have.
And Diego Sanchez?
No, not Sanchez.
Watch. It's either Guida Sanchez or is it Melendez? Anyway, never in a dull fight. Clay Guida's never in a dull fight. And I think Lewis McGrillen reminds me of him. Lewis McGrillen is just beating everybody they put in front of him. He's certainly the best in his weight division in Europe, and he's slowly climbing up. I think PFL have got some good fighters that will continue to win. We'll either see them dominate in PFL or they will eventually move across to the UFC. I'm done. Have you got anything you'd like to add to tonight's sort of bish, bash, bosh, mish, mash, mosh?
We've covered it all, mate, and we don't want to talk about this week too much because then we're ruining, obviously, our No Punches Paul content.
We've done exactly an hour, so I'd just like to thank everybody that's joined us, obviously my co-host Liam, DJ Pat, Paddy Leonard, Mr. Neutral popped in, Mad Mitch TV, my friend Mitch. Bespoke Watches, Bespoke Sneaks, Steel City Treads, or Alex Mitchell, The Mad Mitch on social media for your bespoke watches and rare sneaks. I get all my sneaks through Mitch. I get my Jordans.
Might need to have a look.
Yeah. I'll send you a link on Instagram if anybody wants Steel City Treads Instagram or is into decent sneaks. So I've got some Jordans fear packs that I got. I've got some baby blue Jordans. I've got some Jordan 1s, some Jordan 4s. Mitch would be able to tell you I've got these random New York Knicks high tops that look like you've stood on chewing gum. He knows what they are. I don't. I'm uncultured. I like the colour. Have you got them in a 10? Yes, I'll have them. Thank you very much. But no, Mitch can get. He's got more sneaks in. If he hasn't, he can get them at a decent price as well. So if you're into your sneaks and watches, get at my guy Mad Mitch TV. But look, thanks for joining us, people. As always, like, comment, share, and subscribe. Send me a DM if you've got any topics you'd like me and Liam to cover. I think we're going to start doing a little bit more impromptu lives, just reacting to events, current events, etc. We will be back tomorrow over on SW Fight Hub's YouTube channel for our weekly show with myself, Liam, and Sam Walker, the host of the No Punches Pulled podcast. So yeah, all that's left for me to say is Liam _Tully9. Thanks for joining me, brother. I appreciate it.
I'm sorry. Liam's Fight Night picks back on Wednesday.
Back on Wednesday.
Night. Yes. Recording tomorrow night.
Get yourself over to Jay's Fight Talk. Probably be Thursday morning. That'll go live before lunch or around lunchtime. As I said, we'll be back tomorrow on SW Fight Hub's YouTube channel for No Punches Pulled between 7 and 8 p.m. So thank you very much.